Hello friends, welcome to UGC EPG Pathshala. I am Atika Tajdar from Department of Geography, Jamia Millia Islamia. Today we will discuss about Stockholm Convention. The learning objectives are to get familiar with persistent organic pollutants, which is also called POP, and its harmful effects. To understand the notion of a Stockholm Convention on persistent organic pollutants, to discuss objectives and main provision of a Stockholm Convention, to know type of persistent organic pollutants, to get familiar with process of adding new chemical and implementation of convention, to discuss India Stockholm Convention, and to examine the drawback and criticism of Stockholm Convention. So let us discuss the topic. Persistent organic pollution or POP substances are highly stable and therefore non-degradable to a large extent. They can be transported over long distances and accumulate in the environment. POPs cause problem because they are stored in the fatty tissue or organs of an animal where they can have toxic effects. Persistent organic pollutants are organic compounds that are resistant to environmental degradation through chemical, biological and photolytic processes. Because of their persistence, POPs bioaccumulates with possible adverse impact on health and the environment. The effect of POPs on human and environmental health was discussed with intention to eliminate or severely restrict their production by the international community at the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants in 2001. Many POPs were widely used during the boom in industrial production after World War II. When thousands of synthetic chemicals were introduced into commercial use, many of these chemicals proved beneficial in pest and disease control, crop production and industry. These same chemicals, however, have had unforeseen effects on human health and the environment. Studies on level of POPs in the global environment show that emission sources of a number of POPs such as DDTs and HCHs in late 20 years have shifted from industrialized countries of northern hemisphere to less developing countries in tropical and subtropical region including India and China. Owing to the late production ban are still being used both legally and illegally in agriculture and for the control of disease such as malaria, typhus and cholera. Harmful effects of persistent organic pollutants. Today, POPs are found everywhere like in our food, soil, water or air. Wildlife and human around the world carry amount of POPs in their bodies that are at or near level that can cause injury. Persistent organic pollutants are disrupt the endocrine system. Persistent organic pollutant can disrupt the endocrine system, cause cancer, cause genetic defect, weaken the immune system in people, reproductive, developmental, behavioral, neurologic, endocrine and immunologic adverse health effects have been linked to POPs. Various effects of POPs on marine mammal have been investigated. Studies of Baltic ringed seals, Phoca hispida and grey seals, Helichirus grypus found uterine occlusion, stenosis and tumors resulting in reduced reproductive ability. Other observed effects including colonic ulcer as well as reduced bone density which led to changes in the skeletal system. In seal and porpoises, researchers found indication that POPs depress the immune and endocrine system. A further topic of discussion in this context is whether these pollutants and the weakening of the immune system affect the spread of epidemics such as the disease that killed thousands of seals in the North Sea in 1988 and again in 2002 probably an epidemic of the Phocine distemper virus. Human mainly ingest POPs from food and drinking water, but also from the air, mainly by breathing in dust particles and through the skin, through direct contact with the chemicals. The highest concentration of POPs are generally found in marine mammal and humans, both of which are at the top of the food chain. People are mainly exposed to POPs through contaminated food. Less common exposure routes including drinking contaminated water and direct contact with the chemicals. In people and other mammals alike, POPs can be transferred through the placenta and breast milk to developing offspring. A number of population are at particular risk of POPs exposure, including people whose diets include large amount of fish, shellfish or wild food that are high in fat and locally obtained. In addition, sensitive populations such as children, the elderly and those with suppressed immune systems are typically more susceptible to many kinds of pollutants including POPs. Because POPs have been linked to reproductive impairments, men and women of childbearing age may also be at risk. The Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutant, drawn under the leadership of the United Nations Environment Programme, with significant contribution from non-governmental organizations, trade unions and private companies, it has been saluted as a global public health treaty, one that will protect public health both from DDT and malaria, the first global agreement ever to seek to ban an entire class of chemical because of their direct effect on human health. After 4 years of work, in December 2000, this international legally binding instrument was finalized. In May 2001, delegates from over 100 countries including the United States, Canada and all members of the European Union signed the accord in Stockholm, Sweden. It was expected to be put in effect by 2004 after 50 nations have ratified it. So far, 8 countries have done so. Meanwhile, governments can facilitate voluntary implementation of the agreement prior to its entry into force. Implementation of the treaty at all population level, municipal, regional, continental, constitutes a fantastic opportunity to foster changes in environmental, occupational, public health and food policies. But the challenges are immense. The Stockholm Convention on POPs is a global treaty that aims to protect human health and the environment from POPs. The convention includes several requirements in the control of POP, including banning or restricting the production, use, import and export of POPs, and measures to reduce and or eliminate their release. The convention also contains obligations regarding waste containing POPs, including a requirement to destroy or irreversibly transform the POP's content of waste. The Stockholm Convention is managed by the United Nations Environment Programme and its secretariat is based in Geneva, Switzerland. UNEP is the leading international environmental entity that supports the agenda and implementation of environmental sustainability for the United Nations. The COP, or the Conference of the Parties of the Stockholm Convention, governs the POP's convention, with its members being the convention's parties. The role of parties is to implement the obligation of the convention, including eliminating or restricting the production and the use of intentionally produced POPs, prohibiting and eliminating production and use or import of POPs, conducting research, identifying areas contaminated with POPs and providing financial support and incentive for the convention. The process of becoming a party begins with a state or regional economic integration organization submitting a means of ratification, acceptance, approval or accession to the depository. Official contact points and national focal points are nominated to carry out administrative, communication and information exchange procedures. Now, we will discuss about the objective of Stockholm Convention. Mindful of the precautionary approach are set forth in Principle 15 of the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development. The objective of this convention is to protect human health and the environment from persistent organic pollutants. Main provision of the Stockholm Conventions: prohibit or eliminate the production and use as well as the import and export of the intentionally produced POPs that are listed in Annexure A to the Convention Article 3. Annex A allows for the registration of a specific exemption for the production of use of listed POPs in accordance with that annexure and Article 4, bearing in mind that a special rule applied to PCBs restrict the production and use as well as the import and export of the intentionally produced POPs that are listed in Annexure B to the Convention Article 3. Annexure B allows for the registration of acceptable purposes for the production and use of the listed POPs in accordance with that annexure and for the registration of a specific exemption for the production and use of the listed POPs in accordance with that annexure and Article 4. Reduce or eliminate releases from unintentionally produced POPs that are listed in Annexure C to the Convention Article 5. Ensure that stockpiles and waste consists of containing or contaminated with POPs are managed safely and in an environmentally sound manner, which is in Article 6. The Convention requires that such stockpiles and waste be identified and managed to reduce or eliminate POPs releases from these sources. The Convention also requires that waste containing POPs are transported across international boundaries, taking into account relevant international rules, standards and guidelines. To target additional POPs, which is in Article 8, the Convention provides for detailed procedure for the listing of new POPs in Annexes A, B or C. A committee composed of experts in chemical assessment or management, the Persistent Organic Pollutant Review Committee is established to examine proposal for the listing of chemical in accordance with the process set out in Article 8 and the information requirement is specified in Annexes D, E and F of the Convention. Type of persistent organic pollutants. There are, however, numerous other POPs which are also environmental contaminants and are of great concern. Some of them are both persistent and toxic and still in widespread production and use in both industrialized and less industrialized countries. These include polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon, also called PAH, hexachlorohexane HCH, isomers such as the organochlorine pesticide OCP, lindane organotin compound, for example, used as anti-fouling agent for ships, organic mercury compound, some other pesticide, pentachlorophenol, endosulfane and atrazine, chlorinated paraffins, for example, used in cutting oil and lubricant, polybrominated diphenyl ethers PBDE used as flame retardants, and certain phthalates, dibutyl phthalate DBH and diethyl hexyl phthalate DEHP, which are less persistent but are not the less hazardous, mainly used as plastic softeners, especially in polyvinyl chloride, which is also called PVC. Now we will discuss about the process of adding new chemical. New chemical can be added to the treaty based on a scientific review procedure that involve parties and interested observer. The decision of the COP to add a chemical to the treaty is binding on all parties 1 year later except parties that opt out of this decision within the 1 year period or parties that choose to evoke a separate opt-in procedure under which they are not bound until they affirmatively accept a new obligation. The COP began adding new chemical to the agreement in May 2009. A Stockholm Convention and National Implementation Plan, each party to the Stockholm Convention is required to develop a national implementation plan, describe how it will meet the obligations set by the agreement. Government must develop NIPs within 2 years from its entry into force. The NIP should supply a framework to implement in a systematic and participatory way priority policy and regulatory reform, capacity building and investment programs. Developing countries and countries with economies in transition are eligible for capacity building support for the implementation of the NIP. Finance for these plans is available through the Global Environmental Facility. The Global Environmental Facility, which is also called GEF, has established some guidelines for enabling activity for the Stockholm Convention and has approved the project development of National Implementation Plan for the management of POPs, the objective of which is to strengthen national capacity to manage POPs and to apply the convention. The financial and technical assistance. Developed countries will have to provide fund and technical assistance to less developed nations so that the latter can take effective measures. The European Commission seems committed to providing technical and financial assistance to developing countries and countries with economies in transition. Canada has pioneered a contribution of $2 lakh to China to reduce the use and dispersion of POPs. China and India are still producing DDTs. Even if they ratify the treaty, it is unclear. Even if they ratify the treaty, it is unclear at what pace they will implement it. Although the convention does not create a new fund or establish a specific assessment, developed countries are to collectively provide new and additional financial resources. These funds will enable developing country parties to meet the agreed full incremental cost of implementing measures to fulfill their obligations under the convention. On an interim basis, the convention designated the Global Environmental Facility as the primary but not exclusive component of the financial mechanism. The GEF is a financial mechanism established to address global environmental threats. The entry into force and withdrawal. What is the entry? This convention shall enter into force on the 90th day after the date of deposits of the 50th instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval or accession. For each state or regional economic integration organization that ratifies, accept or approve this convention or accedes thereto after the deposit of the 50th instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval or accession, the convention shall enter into force on the 90th day after the date of deposit by such a state or regional economic integration organization of its instrument of ratification, acceptance, approval or accession. Withdrawal. At any time after 3 years from the date on which this convention has entered into force for a party, that party may withdraw from the convention by giving written notification to the depository. Any such withdrawal shall take effect upon the expiry of 1 year from the date of receipt by the depository of the notification of withdrawal, or on such later date as may be specified in the notification of withdrawal. Now, we will discuss about India and Stockholm Convention. The convention was adopted on 22nd May 2001 and entered into force on 17th May 2004. India ratified the convention on 13th June 2006. Under the convention, the chemical can be listed for elimination, Annexure A, restriction, Annexure B, or unintentional production, Annexure C. The implementation of the convention required its parties to take measures to eliminate or reduce the release of these POPs into the environment. Till date, 26 chemicals are listed as POPs under the Stockholm Convention. As of now, India has ratified only the 12 initially listed POPs. As a first step for implementation of the Stockholm Convention in India, a national implementation plan has been prepared. India is in process of ratification of selected newly listed POPs. The convention will enable India to avail technical and financial assistance for implementing measures to meet the obligation of the convention. India is the largest user of endosulfan. Endosulfan is used as an organochlorine, insecticide and acaricide, killing ticks and mites. Endosulfan belongs to organochlorine group of pesticides such as DDT. It causes endocrine disruption and neurotoxic impact. It is also supposed to be the genotoxic and may lead to genetic mutation. However, it has not been found to be a carcinogenic. Because of its threat to environment as a POP, it is banned in more than 63 countries but still is widely used. In India, it is produced by Hindustan Insecticide Limited. Currently, a global ban on the use and manufacture of indosulfane is being considered under the Stockholm Convention. In India, indosulfane was put on hold in Kerala due to some peculiar health impact seen after aerial spray in the cashew plantation in Kerala. In other states, there are approved manner of usage. There have been conflicting views on the usage of impact of indosulfane. The official says that there is a lack of full scientific certainty about its health and environment impact. However, the environment activists say that the nexus of the government with the insecticide lobby lead to the stern stand of the government. India's stand was not clear in the Persistent Organic Pollutant Review Committee of the Stockholm Convention that began in Geneva, Switzerland, that held in October 2010. In India, the Kerala government demanded the ban on the pesticide as at least a few hundred people have died of poisoning caused by the chemical. Many face a wide range of genetic abnormalities and other health problems. India raised objection to the absence of alternative in the recommendation of the global ban of indosulfane at the Conference of Parties to the Stockholm Convention meeting in Geneva. India has circulated a draft in the Asia-Pacific group seeking postponement of the decision on indosulfane to the next Conference of Parties. However, this was opposed by Gulf countries such as Bahrain, Qatar and Oman, which pointed out that they had banned indosulfane. India, however, has not withdrawn the draft. Now we will discuss about the criticism and controversies of the Stockholm Convention on POPs. Although some critics have alleged that the treaty is responsible for the continuing death toll from malaria, but in reality the treaty specifically permits the public health use of DDTs for the control of mosquitoes, the malaria vector. There are also ways to prevent high amount of DDT consumed by using other malaria vectors such as window screen. As long as there are specific measures taken such as use of DDT indoors, then the limited amount of DDT can be used in a regulated fashion. From a developing country perspective, a lack of data and information about the sources, releases and environmental level of POP hamper negotiation on a specific compound and indicate a strong need for research. Another controversy would be certain POPs which are continually active, especially in the Arctic biota, that were mentioned in the Stockholm Convention but were not part of the dirty dozen, such as perfluorooctone sulfonates. PFOs have many general uses such as stain repellent but have many properties which can make it dangerous due to the fact that the PFOs can be highly resistant to environmental breakdown. PFOs can be toxic in terms of increased offspring death, decrease in body weight and the disruption of neurological system. What makes this compound controversial is the economic and political impact it can have among various countries and businesses. Now we will conclude the topic. In summary, a global environmental treaty such as the Stockholm Convention triggers, streamlines and catalyzes global scientific exchange. Such a global impact will gain even more significance in the future due to the mounting awareness that environmental problems of today and tomorrow can be efficiently addressed and solved only by considering the limit we place on the planet we share. Thank you.